Hi, I'm Reverend Wendy Craig-Purcell here at the Unity Center in San Diego. Thank you so much for watching today. If you'd like to support the work that we do here, please consider making a contribution. Go to our website. It's easy to do. Thank you in advance for that contribution. I hope that despite whatever it is that is going on in your personal life that might be difficult, or whatever you see in the world that pains your heart and causes you to feel worry or concern, I hope that right alongside that, and even certainly greater than that, is your belief in what is possible. And that joining together and moving toward that vision, we really can transform not only our lives, but we can transform our world. And if Christmas is anything, I think it is a call to remember those basic truths. It is a call to remember and to live in a more mindful way, to keep our eyes open, our hearts open, to grow in our faith, to never lose hope, to be centered in peace, and to really deepen in our understanding of and our practice of love. Christmas isn't a day, it is an experience, really. It is a season, and in the Christian church, the season is called Advent. And Advent comes from the Latin adventus, meaning a time of anticipation and a time of preparation. And on one hand, we might think of the ways that we anticipate and prepare for the holiday called Christmas externally, and that is beautiful. And for some of us, it's very different this year than in any year past. But the anticipation and preparation is not simply about the external. More importantly, it is about the internal. It is about who and what we are, who and what we believe, what we stand for, and what we choose to practice. And so I want to talk today about love. And in some ways, it's so easy to talk, well, it is easy to talk about love. And yet, we all have places and times in our life experience where loving can be challenging, can be difficult. And so I want to share some reminders with you. The first is this, and I first heard this idea or read this idea in Robert Muller's book, How Then Shall We Live? It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And the idea is this, that our life is shaped by what we love. Our life is shaped by what we love. Think about that for a moment. Think about the things that you love. Think about the people that you love. Our life is shaped by the people we love. Our life is shaped by the things we love. The Chinese say that if you have an old Chinese teapot, at least 100 years old, an old teapot in which tea was made every single day, if that pot is old enough, after 100 years, you don't need the tea bag or the tea leaves anymore. You just pour the water in, and all that has been shaped and infused into the porcelain comes right back out, and it makes the tea all on its own. Our life is shaped by what we love. Muller writes about it this way in How Then Shall We Live? In our daily lives, whatever we love becomes our center of gravity. When we love something, we feel the truth of it. We feel the truth of it. We touch its deeper nature. Our love breaks it open for us and reveals its secrets. There are many, many things in the world that I have had neither the time nor the ability to love, so I know little about them. But those things I love, I have come to know. What we choose to love is very important. For what we love leads our eyes, ears, and hearts on a pilgrimage that shapes the texture of our lives. Our lives are shaped by what we love. When we love something, think of a hobby you love or an activity that you love. When you love it, Muller is right. We touch its inner core. Its secrets are broken open to us. We have a level of understanding. The same is true when we love another person. We touch their core, their essence, and we are shaped by that.
We see through the lens of what we love. Think about that. We see through the lens of what we love. What we love shapes everything. Pliny the Elder, who was a, a Roman writer during the same time that Jesus lived, wrote about an experience of a king who was having a very large obelisk built in his honor. It was to be 99 feet tall, made of granite. It took thousands of workers, hours and weeks and months and years to make this 99-foot obelisk, and it was lying on the ground. And the engineer who had designed the obelisk was also charged, Pliny had said, was also charged with setting it upright. Now, of course, in those days, the machinery that we take for granted had not even been invented, let alone probably thought of. And so it was how to do this. Well, it was done with ropes and hoists and so forth. But the king knew that if there was one slight error, that whole obelisk would fall and would break, and all of the time and the effort would be lost. And so the king wanted to make sure that the engineer had both his mind and his heart on the job. And he required that the engineer tie his son around the apex of the obelisk, because he knew then that that engineer would see through the lens of love and would absolutely take every care and every precaution in engaging mind and heart to make sure that that obelisk was set properly and did not fall. And of course it worked. We are shaped by what we love. Second is we are to love without judgment, condition, or exclusion. We are to love without judgment, condition, or exclusion. I believe my memory is serving me correctly, that it was Mother Teresa who said this or something very close to this, that if we love someone, we have no time to judge them. If we love someone, we have no time to judge them. We are to love without judgment, without condition, without exclusion. Now, it doesn't say that that's necessarily easy to do. It's probably not. With in certain circumstances and with certain people. But the fact that something is difficult doesn't mean that doesn't excuse us from being called into the practice of it. If we look out upon our world today, we could see that if we were better at loving without judgment, without condition, and without exclusion, that we would be living in a very different world. It would be intolerable to live in a world where people go without. Love wouldn't let us do that. So we have some growing, both as individuals and as a people, to understand what that means, and then to not just understand it, but to connect our mind and heart and our hands, and to do something about it. Mahatma Gandhi said this: "It is easy enough to be friendly to one's friends, but to befriend the one who regards himself as your enemy is a quintessence of true religion. The other is mere business." Gandhi didn't mince words, and in many ways, Jesus didn't mince words either. I was reminded of a friend and colleague and author who speaks here every once in a while for us. Her name is Jan Phillips. I love her work. I love listening to her, and I enjoy reading her books. And I remember reading a passage that she had written in her booklet, Born Gay, about what it means to love without judgment. Let me read a part of it to you. It tells of her painful journey of coming out. She writes, "After my father died, it was the strangest thing, but my mom and I grew closer than we'd ever been. While my dad was alive, she was terrified that I would hurt him by telling him all the details of my life. And every time she told me to keep things to myself, I wanted to march right up to him and tell him I was gay." And if you know Jan, you can just picture that. One weekend, we were visiting with her sister Ruth, who was also into the Bible and dealing with a daughter who had fallen in love with someone unacceptable. She didn't want to abandon her daughter, and she wanted to stay true to the Word of God, so she'd given a lot of thought to this love thing. writes Jan. When my mom told her how upset she was that I was living in sin, Ruth reminded her that Jesus only said to love with all our hearts. He never said, don't love this one or don't love that one. Just love without judgment. Just love without judgment. And I'm always reminded that Jesus linked loving with growth. He linked loving with growth. He said, what reward do you have if you only love those who love you? In other words, what reward do you have if you only love the ones that are easy to love? That we are rewarded when we practice stretching into loving the ones that we find most difficult to love. Because in order to extend our love, we have to do something beyond where we are right now in our awareness, in our feeling, in our consciousness. We have to find a way to move into that experience of love. I was thinking about this again yesterday about, when sometimes the mind likes to argue with us and to say, well, there's certainly got to be some people that you just don't have to love, that you just can't love. And whenever I think of that, I think, let's start a little closer to home. How are you with loving your ex or that person that rubs you the wrong way at work? Let's start a little closer to home before we go out to the exceptions. But there aren't any exceptions when we really get down to it. I was having a conversation with a friend just yesterday or last night, and she said, maybe one day you can give a talk about how we learn to love and have compassion for those who think so fundamentally differently than we do. And of course, we are living in those times right now with a country that is so deeply divided that it is painful to listen and to see and to watch it. We have to find a way into healing of that in order for us to be all that we really can be. So how do you love in that circumstance? And I was deeply thinking about it. And in fact, as I was falling asleep last night, I had an answer come to me, and I got up out of bed and wrote it down on a piece of paper. And it was this: love. When you can't, then show compassion. If even that is too hard, try to understand. If you can't do that, then just listen. I'm going to repeat that. Love. When you can't, show compassion. If even that is too hard, try to understand. And if you can't do that, then just listen. Then just listen. Some of the greatest growth I've experienced in learning to love those in my life that are hard to love has been when I can move into and stay in the place of trying to understand. It's not always easy to do, but trying to understand what is it in their life experience. What have they felt? Where have they been wounded? What has happened that has caused them to be as they are, to do what they do or to act the way that they act? And most of the time, if I can stay in that place, I can move into the place of compassion then. So I think it's almost can be like a ladder, that listening can lead to understanding, which can lead us into compassion, which can lead us into love. And I think it's a gradual ascent. A third point. These words I first heard from Bishop John Shelby Spong, someone who I have long admired, his mind, his heart, his integrity, his authorship. These are words I first heard from him, and I love them. We are to love lavishly and love wastefully. Love lavishly and love wastefully. I think I've even heard him say in a lecture or two, can you ever love too much? You might love unwisely. You might love incompletely. You might love with conditions, and those all have challenges and problems. But true love, can you ever love too much? No. And as I thought about my application of love in certain times and situations and relationships in my life or in my family where I've really had to practice loving, and it wasn't so easy to do, and sometimes getting to that place of thinking, maybe love isn't enough, maybe love can't fix this. Realizing that, you know what? Sometimes when something's really broken, when something's really serious, when a hurt is really deep, when a wound is really painful, sometimes it's not that love can't heal it. It's just that it may take a really long time. And ours is to never, ever, ever give up. The line in 1 Corinthians, love never ends. Love never ends. And love is a verb, right? Too often, if we think about it, the times that we feel upset or frustrated, it's usually because we're looking at love as a noun and not as a verb. And in order for it to be a verb, it is requiring us to take action. When we're on the receiving end of it, then love is a noun, right? But love requires action. It requires action. There's a beautiful little story. I think it comes out of one of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. It's about a man who was going into a floral shop to order a beautiful bouquet of flowers to be sent to his mom, who lived about 200 miles away. And as he left the floral shop after he had placed his order, he noticed there was a little girl outside next to her bicycle, tears in her eyes, and he asked her what was going on, and she explained that she had wanted to buy a rose for her mom, but she didn't quite have enough money. And he said, "Oh, honey, don't worry, come on in. I'll help you buy that rose." And so he did that for her, and she went out, and he said, "I bet you're going to be happy to take that home to your mom." And she just looked at him and said, "No, I'm going to go to the cemetery. My mom died recently, and I want to lay this on her grave." And you can just imagine how he felt. He turned right around, walked right back into that florist shop, canceled the order, the wired order, bought the bouquet, and drove 200 miles to give those flowers to his mom. What was he doing? He was turning that into a deeper action, a deeper expression of love. He grew into an expanded version of it, if you will. Another point is we are to look with our heart even more than our eyes. To look with our heart even more than our eyes. There's a Jewish proverb that says, the heart sees better than the eye. I like that. The heart sees better than the eye. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote, "If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each one's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility." Jesus said, "The world will know you are my disciples," meaning you are my students, "not by how well you quote me, not by how many people you baptize, not by how many people you can convert, but by how well you love one another." And so as we think about this Christmas season, whatever it looks like for you externally this year, let the simplicity of Advent, our themes of hope and peace and love, be the way that you really deepen into the experience of Christmas, that it is about who you are and how you choose to be in the world. For truly, if love is needed at any time, it is needed now. We need to stop marginalizing each other, demonizing each other. We have got to find our way back to love. And if we can't start with love, then let's start with compassion. And if we can't muster up compassion, then let's try to move to understanding. We become the way that we are. The other becomes the way that they are. So we move into understanding. If we can't do that, maybe it's time to just be quiet and to deeply listen to one another. Namaste.